Yeah, well, I included 2%.
Okay,
I don't know if that, from a mathematical consideration, I don't know whether the,
I think they have to be included.
okay, so we want the zeros back in the averages?
I think so. Even if it skews it down lower.
Do we want them in the medians then?
I honestly don't know the difference between an average and a median. To me, they're the
Well, an
same.
average is no, they're different. With an average, you add up all the numbers and divide by the
total.
number of entries.
Let me see if I can explain the median.
Median's like a bell curve.
Yeah,
No, I-
median's a bell
So
curve.
half are above that number and half are below.
It's the middle number of the values.
And median is,
Median is the
No,
middle
median is
number,
the half
is
are
the bell
above and
curve.
half below.
the median is the
Oh,
bell
oh,
curve.
Right, half are above, half
I
are
see.
below. Well, I don't know enough whether to add the zeros or not, that I don't know. I'll just go back, I really think the fact that that the numbers show that, like every other organization in the world, our interviewees spend less time on policy and long-term planning than keeping the lights on.
Mhm. Well, that's
Not
their job,
surprising.
keeping the lights on, I guess. But that does say that as a town, we're not
maybe we need to devote more time to that.
Well,
But it-
right, and that was, by the way, I'm remembering, that was a complaint, if that's the right word, of the moderator, saying because the selectmen manage have so many people reporting to them, and don't empower the town administrator, that means they're attending to details and they're not freed up to
They're not,
do
they're not
long-term
doing, they're not doing the executive
Said
function.
in another way, a decentralized form of town government doesn't allow you to focus on long-term planning
That's
as much. And that's because you're doing day-to-day.
That's right, that's right,
And, you know, that's not unique to Topsfield, that's everywhere.
that's correct.
So that's,
And so, right, even though, no, I don't know if I want to go down that branch.
So
I thought this,
I think that's
like-
fantastic.
I think that's a good takeaway, that last.
well, that, okay, so we keep that in there as a good takeaway,
I do.
and I'm supposed to put the zeros back in the
yeah, I think we might
averages?
wanna look at the numbers again, but I like the summary, that last sentence. I would ask if you can to do with the, I mean, how hard is it to go with this?
There was no time at all.
Right, so if you could do it for administrative, because I think
And
it's
you
good
think
for them to know.
admin is another important one to
I
do
think
here?
so. Because to me, administrative is a lot like operations, day-to-day operations.
What do you mean administration, is that in?
Well, it's D, it's operational, it's D, performing or overseeing operational and administrative tasks.
I see.
All I could think of for the road commissioners and water commissioners, that other was monitoring or overseeing things like contracts and RFPs and like, you know, when they have a project, getting those projects done.
It was sort of like project
Yeah,
management.
and I don't know if that would more accurately fall into operational or administrative or not,
Performing or overseeing.
but
operational and
I think I need to talk with Phil Knowles about that. I'll try to get you some numbers as soon as I can.
Okay,
I don't know if 2 responses out of 20 is gonna skew it one way or the other greatly, but let me talk to him and see what those numbers might be. And then I'll get them to you as soon as I get hold of them. Because that could change it. If his lines that we've done, then all of them could change each one just a little bit.
well, probably that whole hunk is gonna go into the same place, someplace.
Yeah, I think so.
KBD.
I think so.
So then they'd be spending 60% of their time on
Right, if
operational
that's,
and
if that's what
administrative.
it is, then that's what it
And
is.
it kind of makes sense because they are managing that, you
Mhm.
know, that is their role to manage that area. That isn't being done by the Board of Selectmen or the town administrator or anybody else. All right,
Nice
so,
job.
so all of this here I'm just forgetting about. All of the, based on their function, responsibility, boards and committees spent the majority of their time in different ways.
No, I think I like the sentence, but I don't think you need all the stuff after it.
Okay, so I'm just not gonna do all this
I concur.
gobbledygook. And so then I don't need to talk about which,
Well, are there any, so they were all over the board, and maybe each category deserves its own sentence. The least amount of time was measured by, and, you know, and do it prior, you know, boards spend X amount of time on long-term planning, the least amount of any category, if that's true, you know, like,
yeah,
it's a little bit of color to each one.
it is probably the least, because it's one of the two bottom
Right,
ones,
right,
yeah.
boards spend their most time on.
The second most amount of time was spent on blah, blah, blah.
That's
Yeah, all right.
one.
Well, I'll see if I can do for all, something like that, all right.
Based upon averages and medians. Something like
All right.
that. I think honestly this is great. I also, I don't know that we need this.
No, that was my thinking on paper, to try to figure out what
Yeah.
I could see.
I looked at it and I was just left scratching my head because I didn't know how to summarize it, so I think that this last sentence does it well. So when you say 1710, this is average 17, median 10, right? That's what that means.
Yeah, I can write it more clearly, that was, like I said, I was thinking on
Right.
paper, because I couldn't think in my head. All right,
Do we go to 24?
24. Okay, so, again, my strange way of putting things together. Okay. So, I tried to meld what we both said into one, and you kind of could or couldn't, depending on how you look at it. So I changed it to say the responses to this question were mixed. In general, the chairs of elected boards gave advantages of elected boards, while the chairs of appointed boards gave advantages of appointed boards, but no one advocated for all elected or all appointed. A few board chairs, 4 out of 20, explicitly said Topsfield has the right mix of elected and appointed. Now, this next section here, this next paragraph, is basically a summary of what's in these last two tables, the elected board's advantages and disadvantages, and the appointed board's advantages and disadvantages, which I think you asked me to put together. So that just is a verbal explanation of those. The most cited advantages of elected boards, the most cited advantages of appointed boards, blah, 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 blah. So I think you either put this in, or you include paragraphs 2, 3, and 4 from yours. Which, if you go back to what your 2, 3s, and 4s were, if you're giving a verbal explanation of the neutral, the pro, the con. I don't think you need both of them, and I'm not sure.
Well, I agree, both would be redundant. My preference, and this the lawyer in me, is to use words so there's no misconstruing what the information at the table might mean. It can be construed different ways, so I want to say, I would prefer that we say what we intend to say, as opposed to.
Well, my thought is, if you're going to include this, okay, then you definitely should put in the table, because that supports that, you know, so people can see it in tabular form. If you're not going to say this and you're going to use your 2, 3, and 4, then you can still include this or not include it. And then I wrote a final summary paragraph, which was sort of yours, sort of mine, and sort of all just put together.
Is that this one here?
Discussions?
Yeah, based upon discussions with respondents, the GRC, there's your construe, I thought maybe we say concludes. There's general support for the current mix of elected and appointed boards and committees, and the mix strikes a balance between elected boards responsive to all residents and appointed boards whose members should have some level of specialized skill and knowledge to perform the responsibilities of their board. So I think that's the general takeaway, and I think most of that's yours.
That's very much mine. I do like the word concludes though, I think that's fine. That's what we're saying.
Okay. So then there's the other two parts of mine that we include or we don't include, and one is, I had done a summary of the comments from the boards divided out by elected or appointed, maybe that doesn't even matter, can get rid of that. And then include what you have here.
That hasn't changed since the last one.
No, but I've got one, I think this is 5. I counted it about 4 times, it's not 4 out of 20.
4, 6, that would be 21.
But-
So would that be,
Well, the way I look at it, a person can say more than one thing. Some of the chairs suggested that it was important to have appointed boards whose members would have specific or requisite skills, experience, and knowledge.
So-
They don't have to add up to 20 because everyone's comment, most comments have
no,
multiple parts.
that's fine, I'm not wed to that. I just, in my mind, when I got some advantages, some disadvantages, I lumped them in the neutral category because I thought both. I mean, again, that was the form of the question, what it is.
Okay, so your approach was really to look at it in those ways, not to say, person A said this, and this.
I try to simplify and take each response and say, okay, what category do I think this is in?
And that's where I'm gonna count them for everything they said. Okay, well, I did it differently. I said if somebody said something pro about one and pro about the other, then they counted in 2 places.
Right, so if you had something, right, so you could have in theory, I thought it'd be too confusing for a reader if we were going by numbers to do that way. I tried to bring that up at our last meeting or maybe the one before. So do we wanna do, say there were 4 people who said, who were strongly against appointed boards, I'm just making that number up. But there were 12 people who were for elected and appointed boards. I'm sorry, let me start with my analogy. 4 people who were strongly for elected boards, and there were 12 people who were strongly for elected and appointed boards. Does that mean there were 16 people who were strongly for elected boards? Is that what you were saying? Is it like, do we want to parse it out in all different ways? Or is that too much information?
It's all too much information.
I think, Lou, I lean toward your approach, which is if how many, 10 of them gave both advantages and disadvantages, I'd call it neutral. That they would not advocate one side or the other. They saw both sides, saw the advantages and disadvantages, call them neutral. That's how I would have reacted, done the same, I think.
And the question is, it's hard to, I mean, it's like 26 is an imperfect question that asks for advantages and disadvantages. So it's really hard to get a strong for or against, just by the design of it.
Well, I see where you were coming from, to simplify it. My approach was a little different, and I'm not sure that.
I don't think it's wrong, and maybe, we could say, do the summary. This could also be viewed as most of the board chairs being in favor of elected, or X amount of the board chairs being in favor of elected boards. I don't know. I don't know what the takeaway is if we do.
Yeah, oh, I was thinking not whether they were for or against appointed or elected, what they thought the advantages were and the disadvantages were. You could be on an elected board and you want your board to be elected, but you could see tons of advantages for appointed boards. And it was really more the appointed boards that could see some advantages for elected boards. But it doesn't, it's all the same to me.
What if we did the simplified approach and then say some of the specific responses by board chairs are indicated in the table below, and then do the table, something like that?
Yeah, so, okay, so then we would include this table,
Both of them, yeah?
both, and we would get rid of all of these, back to the first page, it's the bottom part that says the summary of comments from elected boards and summary of comments from appointed boards. Display that more in the way of the table.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, all right, so we'll get rid of this, and we'll get rid of this. All right. So, all right, so then probably, that being said, then we want to get rid of do we want to get rid of the words that explain these tables we're including? The most cited advantages of elected boards are,
I would.
I think we should get rid of that too.
I think the same information is in the table, and the table is easier to read.
Yeah,
So,
but I'm just going back to what you said, you like.
Yeah, I have a
the
preference
lawyer
for
in there.
words, and so I have to look at the table again. So the number in parentheses here is 5 of 20 said more democratic / representative, that's what the 5 is, right? 5 of 20.
Yeah,
you see the note under each table. So the number
Oh.
of parentheses indicates the
Yeah.
number of chairs who respond.
Well, you want me to read the whole thing?
Just the footnote.
and so know that these aren't gonna easily add up to 20 because people say multiple things.
Right,
And they did
that's
say
right.
multiple things.
So I like the table then. I mean, I don't want to, because you put in work for this paragraph, but I think the table, as long as it has the numbers in parentheses, is pretty clear.
Well, once you make the table, the words are pretty easy to come up with,
Yeah.
so that's not an issue. Okay, we'll get rid of that then. So we're getting rid of the words.
Yes, I'm just,
So we can see both at the same
I
time.
was just trying to compare the two, so like, lack of diversity. Bulky there down the point boards. Yeah, I like the tables, I definitely like the tables.
Okay, so then we'll get rid of the words.
That's okay with me, I don't know.
So, Roberta, in that paragraph, it ends with political, personal, and 5 out of 20.
Okay, but it's two things. While elections could result in the unqualified candidate and those in it for political personal gain winning. You can go over to here, those are two different categories, and if you add those up together,
It's fine.
it's 5. I think.
That's what I was looking for.
Maybe it is, maybe-
I wasn't thinking, I wasn't finding something to add to 5.
Well, it's 4 and 1.
Okay.
I sort of discounted elections not necessary for some committees because maybe I shouldn't have done it that way, but.
Yeah,
I see it now. Okay, thank you.
we both like having, I like having the split between elected and appointed boards here, since
Yeah.
people tend to support what they currently are, so we're good with that, right?
Yeah.
So we're getting rid of the words. Is that the list?
This, yes.
Okay, we're getting rid of these words. All right, so then we're putting loose summary back in here. These paragraphs.
I like your
2,
first
3, and 4.
paragraph, though.
Well, I'm keeping, this is the first paragraph,
Mhm.
And then we're going with your 2, 3, and 4, paragraph 2, 3, and 4, which is your neutral, pro, con, basically.
Yeah,
And then we're gonna go, I think this last conclusion is yours.
yeah, and then we're gonna go, but in between the last conclusion, we'll put a sentence about this, well, this might have to come at the end.
I think that goes way at the end.
Yeah, so then, I think that's right.
Okay. All right. Good. Whew.
It's 18 now.
That's what I got.
So I think then, we've gone through all the questions, all the responses to the questions. Are we comfortable that we're all on the same page? I think we are after last week and tonight. Do we have,
I think so, yeah.
do we have any, if you're gonna, give us something?
Yeah,
If not, write it down, write it down.
right, straight right there, but I think I had it. I think it was distributed to us when we were appointed.
You just say it on camera.
No, you don't.
617.
999.
Yeah.
Okay,
You can call me if you have questions about, specific questions about the summaries as you put them
Okay.
together. And I might call, I'm not gonna call you, Keisha, I might call you.
Yeah, don't call
the
me.
executive summary.
because I'm around, yeah. This is my question, this is my request. I need everybody's hard copy, everyone's electronic copy. And
That's the one.
You want this in electronic copy or is there something else that you want? This is,
I
this is
want
good.
that in electronic copy.
Okay,
It was
Because I need to meld them all into one thing, and then I have to go through and, change whatever needs to be changed.
Just to send it, I need to send a note to myself.
do you need that master list draft or responses?
I
Do you
have that one.
somewhere? Okay.
Someplace. But I don't think I need that unless it's gonna be an appendix or something.
No, I don't think you need it. And I think it needs to get cleaned up before it's ready for the appendix, so I guess somebody needs to do that too. Because that's still, like, it's got typos in it, and it needs to be shortened up and consistent with what we write here, so that still needs to get cleaned up.
Well, this will be a challenge, because this is the first document that I've actually had to write from beginning to end in,
Word?
let me think how many years. Because the last 15 years I worked, I had 2 executive assistants.
Well, I do all my own typing. No, that's, it's, if you encounter questions,
No, I can do it, it's just gonna be very interesting.
Open communications.
Yeah, so I have all the information from John's. Am I going to make tables to represent John's? Am I going to?
I think we need to put them in words. Can you just pause for a second?
Yeah, here are my updated copies,
This is
this is
the
what it's.
latest and the
Yeah,
greatest?
I just made the updates we talked about last week, but
Okay.
I'll send it to you electronically. It's in Word, so, it should be true that these.
This is just a word table.
This isn't a
It's a
word,
word table.
you can
It's a word
convert a table into text. I don't know if you need help doing that, but.
No, I know how to do that.
Okay.
I need all those tables, I figured out how to do tables.
Okay. So it might just be as simple as removing the bullets and making that a paragraph,
Okay, yeah, we'll do that.
I am gonna take my hand at wordsmithing this executive summary.
And so you have all of our copies, do you want that do you want a file of that, or are you okay with?
No, I think I'm okay with hard copies. If I cut and paste everything into a Word document, it'd be too hard to look at. I can spread them out on the table in front of me.
Yeah. All right, so my goal between now and the 20th is to get all of this into one document in some level of formatting.
This is what I would say, do what you can, and if we meet on the 20th, bring what you can then, and if it's not done, it's not done. I mean, that's it.
He was a nicer boss than I was.
We're
It's
volunteers.
realistic.
Oh,
It's
that's right,
realistic.
we're realistic. What can you possibly do? Give me a bad review?
So, yeah, that's the goal, meet on the 20th.
Yep.
Um,
Thursday, 27 PM, actually. If we meet
Yes,
at
I think,
7 PM.
I think so, and I don't foresee there being a problem with that, so.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, I can't do it on
Oh, that's okay,
Well, the Friday's the night before I fly to Europe. I don't think I
Yeah.
wanna be here.
I don't really wanna meet on a Friday night.
Hello.
In fact, I just remember going to a Red Sox game that night, so,
A Friday night?
yes.
Well, good.
I don't even
Good
know
for
if
you.
it's Friday night.
Doesn't matter.
And, I'll try to keep track, I'll try to find out what time we might be on the agenda for the selectmen's meeting on the 17th, and I'll see you later.
Okay.
I didn't get any correspondences of note. Is there anything else that you guys want to suggest before we have, someone make the best motion tonight?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Are you kidding?
All right, go ahead, Dave.
Oh.
Let's get a second on the floor and then we'll go.
I'll second.
All right, go ahead, Dave.
See if my mouth works this week. Last week I had trouble. I was looking at, I think this was Roberta's summary, and one of the things I'd suggest you consider is, right at the top, put the goals. You know, what are the goals of the GRC?
I don't think that was ever really,
Well, it proves, I think,
we could put our charge.
at least in my mind, what you came up with was to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of town government.
Well, we'd have to look at our charge.
Yeah, but then you can measure, you know, a lot of the feedback against that goal or goals. That was my thought.
I don't hate that idea at all, and I think if I would recharacterize that, I would say our goals were to consider the structure of town government, not operational pieces, to see if we can improve the efficiency or delivery of services through some structural review or change of the town government. That was, right?
Yeah, but it comes back to those two words, efficiency and effectiveness. At least in my mind, that's what I thought I heard. Okay, that was one. I think if you talked about interviewing management employees, but I think if you interviewed non-management employees, you get a completely different perspective on where the opportunities were. Effectively, we're almost asking the chairs to evaluate themselves when you think about it. Also, the chairs are really not operational employees. It may not be the correct term, but they're very, very different functions in the town. And my experience is when you ask the hourly people for suggested improvements, boy, that's where I got the best input sometimes. Because they could see things management were just blind to. I had one comment, there was a discussion on small sample size. I might suggest, at first I wrote down narrow sample size, but I thought narrow was maybe too negative. Small targeted sample size. Really what it is, it's a narrow function you've been looking at. And that goes to the other point you were talking about, maybe interviewing more people or more functions. You know, so it all kind of
Yeah.
comes back in a circle to what you were saying. Yeah. John, you talked about looking at outliers sometimes. I think we've all had the experience that significant improvements often come from a single person or idea. If it was everybody's idea and a consensus, probably would have been done already. So it's kind of interesting, sometimes the light bulb goes off for one person.
I do think we're gonna elevate all the specific concerns that were somehow, I don't think there's that many of them, I think we're planning on doing that.
Maybe more than you think.
Yeah, I have to go back to it.
Now, this work is excellent, there's a lot of information here, and you're struggling with what's obvious. how do you present it in a concise, simple format and get the message across?
Mm.
Just a last comment, and it's more rhetorical question. Where are the opportunities? With the boards and commissions or with the employees?
Opportunities for what is the question?
For improvements and to meet the goals. You know, most of the boards are not involved with the day-to-day operations, may have a different perspective. I think they're both very helpful. I think everybody mentioned that you were talking about, so. It was just my thought, I don't mean to expand on the potential work.
Who made that motion? Was that you who made the motion?
I don't know, I think I did.
It was Roberta who moved to adjourn and I seconded.
All in favor?
And I,
Did you say that?
Aye, yes, sorry. Of course. I don't think I've ever said no to that motion.
I just want to note that it is 3 minutes before